Hi, and welcome to this video about Microsoft Agent Framework, where we'll be using C# to connect to various non-OpenAI models, meaning Gemini, Claude, Grok, Llama, and Foundry Local, the last two being offline. So Microsoft Agent Framework is, of course, really good at OpenAI and Azure OpenAI, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work with anything, more or less. Meaning that if something out there supports the iChat client, the agent framework can work with it. So let's jump in and see some implementations of various models. So in my sample repo that is linked in this description of this video, there is various zero to first agents. We saw the Azure OpenAI and OpenAI as a full video, but these will be shorter videos where there just will be some steps up here. And the first one I will show is XAI, because that actually just works on the OpenAI spec. So there is nothing really different between OpenAI here and Grok, other than you need to get your API key from Grok instead of OpenAI. And whenever you new up the OpenAI client, you need to give an endpoint, the default endpoint being OpenAI, but you can go in and give the endpoint. And beyond that, everything is exactly the same. You take your OpenAI client, turn it into an agent, and run async or run streaming async, just like the two others. So that one was quite easy because it's essentially the same. If we look at some non-OpenAI based, we have Google Gemini. So Google Gemini needs another NuGet package, Google Generative AI.Microsoft, which then can make the OpenAI client. And that's the most important thing. So we of course need a Google Gemini API key. You can get those for free up here. And then you put that API key in and you choose your model among the different models that are in the system. You then new up a generative AI client, and that is just an iChat client, and then you can new up a chat client agent, which takes in an AI client and make it into an AI agent. And from that on, it's again exactly the same, where we do the run async to get our response back, or our run streaming async to get our updates back to the system. So again, very simple to do. Next up, we have Anthropic, which is probably the hardest one to get going. They have always been hard to get going. But of course, you need an Anthropic API key. And then you need the Anthropic SDK, which is just a NuGet package as well, and the agent's AI. And once you have your API key, you need to choose your model, in this case a Claude 3.5 Haiku. And then you need to make your Anthropic client using your API key, and then you use this a little odd syntax compared to the others, but messages.asbuilder.build to get your iChat client. But as we can see here, we don't embed which model it is. We need to do that with each call, which is the funky part. But that is just making one of these iChat chat client agent run options, where we give the model, and then for some odd reason they always want the maxed output tokens in the system. But once you have that, everything works exactly the same as before. The final thing we have is the offline models. The most known is Ollama, which then hosts the Llama client. And then you can use that with the Meta's Llama models. In my case, a little model here, but that's not that important. So you need to download Ollama, which is a service you run on your machine, and then you get a port, a localhost port here that you need to put in instead of API keys and stuff, together with a model. You then need to use an Ollama Sharp client, which is just again a NuGet package, and the Microsoft Agents AI. And just as we saw with Gemini, we then get an iChat client from that that we can turn into an AI agent and run exactly the same as before. The final one in this video is Foundry Local, which is Microsoft's sort of version of Ollama. In here, there's a bunch more code, but that's because I have chosen to put in all the code that is needed to get this up and running without anything needed to be done. So here it's using winget in order to get if the winget package is installed using normal C#. I have a separate video on this in detail, so we won't go to it too much. The installation of it, if it's not, but again, this has nothing to do with AI. This is winget stuff and Windows stuff. But we then have our manager of Foundry Local, where we need to choose which model we want to use and start that model when we have the service up and running and get some model information back. And once we have that, it is essentially also OpenAI specific. We don't need a key, but we just need to point to another endpoint. So it's essentially the same as the OpenAI. And then again, we do exactly the same thing to get our run async and run streaming async. So there's of course other models out there, Hugging Face, which can be done via the Ollama and Foundry Local. There's DeepSeek, which works with OpenAI spec, so that's also easy. So I don't really think there is any big model out there that can't use this because they all support the iChat client. Because if they do that, it just works in Microsoft Agent Framework. So with that, thank you. See you in the next one.